On this episode of Law with Leila, I'm interviewing Okeoma Moronu. Okeoma is an attorney and the host of the Happy Lawyer Project podcast. She's a happiness enthusiast determined to show lawyers that it's possible to find happiness in life with a law degree. She lives her message as a mother, wife, and avid traveler, sharing her message of happiness with anyone who's willing to listen. And now, here's the interview. Hi, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to have you here.
No, thank you for having me on. I'm really excited.
Thank you. So I want to learn more about you and who you are and what you're doing, and then we're gonna get into some of the questions that I have for my audience.
Great. Yeah, so my name is Okeoma Moronu, and I am in-house counsel at an aviation company here in Dallas. That is a fairly recent move for me. I started my career up in New York where I went to law school, and then I was one of the lucky few coming out of the recession with a job on Wall Street at a big law firm. And I actually was one of those people who had never saw myself in big law, so it was a shock to find myself there, and I think I was shocked for most of my time there, but I really loved the experience. And most recently, I actually started a podcast to kind of share my journey of how I was able to find happiness in a place that people would say should have been quite unhappy.
Yes, definitely. That's exactly, I mean, that's why that's how I was introduced to your work, actually, through the podcast and through the website. And why don't you talk about that a little? Because I love what you're doing.
Yeah, so I am the host over at the Happy Lawyer Project, and that came about when I was in a transition in my own career and was having conversations with lawyers and found myself really inspired by all the really cool things people were doing and all the really innovative ways people were using their law degree. And I just was not aware at all. And I wanted to share these conversations because even though there were all these paths that I knew I wasn't going to take, I knew there were other people who could benefit from hearing that this was possible. And I started a blog, and that didn't work because I didn't want to write at the end of the day. I was like, oh, I'll make it into a book. I don't know why I thought I was going to write a book if I couldn't write a blog. And my husband very graciously bought me this mic, and he said, what if you just hit record and put that out in the world? And so the podcast was born, and it's just been a wonderful opportunity for me to connect with, that unicorn of a creature that is the happy lawyer.
Nice. Very nice. So is that going forward, are you going to continue making podcast episodes, and is that something that you're going to continue doing, or is it not known?
Yeah, I mean, I'm at this stage in my career and life where I really do things that work for me. I try to create space for the things that inspire me and serve me. And right now, I love the podcast. I love serving my audience, and I love meeting my guests. So as long as I'm in that space where I find it really rewarding, I will continue to do it.
I love it.
Once it stops being rewarding, then we'll wrap it up, and that'll be that.
It's amazing. You do a lot of work. I mean, how do you manage to do that? Because I know you have a family, and how do you juggle all this? What's your secret?
I don't think there is a secret. I think I have a loving husband who, right now, is putting our two boys to bed, and I am really good at saying no. I've always been really good at setting boundaries. That's something that I think has served me really well over my entire course of my career. And I think that is something that a lot of unhappy lawyers struggle with. And I'm not trying to be especially gendered, but I think a lot of female attorneys struggle with.
Yes.
And I often say that your leaky boundaries is what's going to drown you. People think they're setting boundaries, but then they're making so many exceptions that it's just not even worth it. And so I personally really know what matters, and every day really prioritize those things. And I'm not afraid to say that's enough for today. I have to stop working. The work will be there tomorrow. I'm also not afraid to say that I have to say goodnight to my kids. I'm doing this, and then I'm interviewing other people for my podcast, and then I'm packing, and then I'm flying to Canada at 5 a.m. So I've seen my kids 2 hours today, but I also spent 4 days with them in New Orleans over the weekend. So it's all a balancing act and really taking a long view of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Knowing that any given day isn't going to be perfect, but I hope that every week is a little bit more perfect and every month is a little bit more perfect. And as the years go by, kind of the life that I build when I look back will feel a little closer to perfect.
I love it. That's beautiful. I love it. So what are some of the tips that you have for law students who want to get into Biglaw? I know that a lot of my audience want to go and get that job at Biglaw, and that's like their dream. What are your top tips for doing that, whether they're in law school or even lawyers who want to go into that?
I think that the thing that really separates, and I was on the recruiting committee and did a lot of recruiting for both firms that I worked at. And I think one of the things that separates candidates that are really appealing, I mean, obviously grades matter, and I don't think that's ever going to go away, but there's an authenticity that comes from people who've actually spent the time to figure out why they want to be in big law and how their skill sets would be a good fit for that firm. And I think that's really, really hard to do because firms start to sound the same and they start to seem the same from the outside. And it really takes an amount of intentionality and proactivity, is that a right word? For
Right.
students to go out and interview people, meet people, ask them, what does your day-to-day look like? What is the difference between a leveraged finance attorney and an M&A attorney? Is capital markets the same thing as securities law? Is a litigator the same thing, a trial attorney the same as a white collar attorney? They're really not. And then those minute differences and understanding those differences helps a law firm know where to place you in their firm. I think the worst thing associates do, at least for me, is when they come in and you ask them, what would you like to do? And they said, oh, I'll do anything. I'm open. And they think that being open is really a benefit, but I think it's really hard to place somebody who's open. Whereas
so what do you recommend? Like what would they like? What if they said it would sell you? Like,
I don't think that there's an expectation that as a first year, as a 1L or 2L, you have your whole life charted out ahead of you. But I think somebody who says, I'm really interested in this area of law because I understand that this is what the work entails. And I think that my skill set is I am somebody who likes longer hours. I deal well with like a lack of predictability. Because when you think about like the practice group I was in was very up and down, feast or famine. Sometimes I'm working 100-hour weeks. Other weeks I'm working 5 hours. Some people can't deal with that. Like they don't like to have to cancel their plans. They'd rather work 12-hour days every day than ever have to work an 18-hour day. And knowing those differences and knowing that about yourself will also help you find the right fit. And so I'm just looking for someone who's done a little bit of thought, both about the work, the lifestyle, the like personality traits that suit that type of practice, and done the reflection to know that they could potentially, fit into that group. And I think too much certainty is always a problem, but you have to put some thoughtfulness into it.
So do you recommend students to narrow down their search to a specific firm and then doing the research like that, or trying to find what they want to do first and then narrowing it down?
I think that firms tend to have personalities, so really you should do the introspective work first. Really, do you want to work with people who are kind of that late night party crowd who work hard, play hard? There are some lawyers who really are burning the candle on both ends, and that's kind of a lifestyle choice. Are you looking for more of a sustainable practice that feels more traditional? There are much more traditional law firms. Are you looking for work where you're going to get to write a lot? Do you want to get to speak a lot? Do you want a lot of client time? Do you want a lot of alone time? Do you like to work collaboratively? And once you know that, then you start meeting with people. Meet with associates that have graduated from your school, that are your friends. Reach out to people on LinkedIn and ask them, what type of personality do you think suits the work you're doing? And think, because that's the way you'll learn whether or not, their practice makes sense for you. I think once you go in with a preconceived idea that I want to be a litigator, you're going to make it fit. You're going to hear what you want to hear to support your already pre-existing belief that you're built to be a litigator. Whereas I think the way you need to be open is in finding the right, it's kind of like when you're dating, If you think what you need in somebody is like 6'4", blonde hair, blue eyes, and you just can't see that like perfect guy who just doesn't fit that mold. Whereas when you really, really reflect and know that what you need is somebody who's X, Y, and Z, then it's a little bit easier to find the right fit. that's going to work out long term. And people make mistakes. You know, it's not a perfect science. Firms make mistakes picking associates. Associates make mistakes picking firms. But I think with the right amount of work on the front end, you can greatly reduce those mistakes and therefore increase your likelihood of, one, getting the job, and two, being successful when you're there.
And happy, right? Because that is important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that brings me to my next point. How can you be happy? What is your formula? What is it that you found throughout these years that you've done this, you've done the work, and you've interviewed people? What is your formula for living a happy life?
Yeah, I mean, I've interviewed hundreds of people at this point. I've read dozens of books on happiness. I've read every study. I've talked to authors who've written about it. And for myself, mentally, I break it down into 4 categories. I call them the 4 A's. And the first is attitude. I think the first foremost is you have to actually believe it's possible. I think no matter how good circumstances are, if you are convinced you cannot be happy as a lawyer, you will 100% of the time be correct.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
If you're a good lawyer, you'll be able to convince yourself that you're right no matter what. And then I think the second thing is what I call acknowledgments or awesomeness. There's people like to be good at things. Like, we like to accomplish things. We like the accolades that come with succeeding. I think that's why a lot of us are lawyers, is that we are good at school. We like getting the A's. And I think that that's really hard in the beginning when you're a lawyer, because you don't know what you're doing. So it makes you feel terrible.
Exactly.
Because you feel like you have no idea what you're doing. So I really encourage people to hang in there and get to the point where you have a little more under your belt and really celebrate the small wins, because that's the process to happiness. And then I think aspirations is the third A. And I think aspirations are really important because for many people, the aspiration was becoming a lawyer. And then once they became a lawyer, they don't know what they want after that. There's no big goal they're working towards. And so the goal becomes hitting your billable hours. But that's not something that, like, you know, really like makes you feel good about. It's not a value that you hold deeply. So people, I think, feel very lost, and it's hard to know if you're moving in the right direction if you don't have something that really speaks to you. So I think setting goals and having dreams and working towards those. And then I think the last one is alignment. You need to be in alignment with your values, with your aspirations, with your strengths, your gifts. I think that even if you are successful, even if you have aspirations, if they're not genuine and authentic to who you are,
I love that.
You're not going to ever be happy. And once people are able to really check all those boxes and move towards the direction of checking all those boxes, it's surprising how easy it is to be happy in the law.
I love that. I love that, especially the last one, because there's so many different things and ways to be a lawyer. And if it's not aligned with who you are and what your core values are, you're going to have a very hard time. And it's a lot of stress. It's a lot of pressure. And, even in law school, I feel like law school prepares us for life after law school. And so does the bar exam. But then sometimes, even for people who I realize don't pass the bar exam, it's because it's hard for them to see past that. Right. And it's hard to see for them what they want to do and who they want to be. And so what do you recommend for people like that, when people who are stuck, actually, who can't really see themselves? Like, what kinds of research or things do you recommend for them to do to find themselves and to find what makes them happy?
I love that question. I think it's so important to chase your curiosity and to not make everything a life sentence. I think so many lawyers, they really get ahead of themselves in that they really become dedicated to becoming a lawyer and they let everything fall aside. They're like, oh, I used to love to run, but I don't have time anymore. I used to love to draw. You'd be so shocked by the number of people who used to be so creative, but then for some reason they thought that becoming a lawyer meant they had to put that aside.
Right.
And then I'm like, well, why don't you draw? They're like, well, I'm never going to be an artist. Yeah. You don't have to, you don't have to be an artist.
Exactly.
And I like to tell people that maybe your dream job doesn't exist yet. When I was in college, like, there was no such thing as Instagram. Like, you could not have made a career as like a Instagrammer and a social media marketer. Like, that didn't exist. But there were people waiting in the like wings who understands social media, who understood marketing, who their whole life had wanted to do video, but just couldn't like get on TV and as soon as the platform became available, they had been slowly gathering the skills so that they were ready to explode. And so I feel like you need to just slowly be building up the skills so that when your dream job, whatever it may be, inside or out of the law, comes knocking, you're not like, oh crap, I wish I had been drawing that whole time, because that's the only thing I had let slide. And if I had that skill set, I would be ready.
I love it.
So just do the things you like,
yes.
And you'll be surprised. It all falls into place.
And it all goes back to all the forays that you discussed. You got to have the attitude first to know, okay, you know what, I know that I'm going to find what I'm passionate about, what makes me happy. I'm going to take the small steps. I'm going to take a step every day. And like you said, not every day is going to be perfect, but at least at the end of the week, maybe you're moving towards finding your happy and being that person that you want to be a little more than you were the week before, so it's all about that. I love it. Yeah.
Happiness is very directional. You know what I mean? It's not like you have a single path to happiness, and if you step off it, you're doomed. If you're headed in the right direction, you'll get there.
I love it. That's awesome.
I think people often get too stuck on being worried that they're going to make the wrong decision and it's going to really ruin their chances of finding happiness. But I think if you look at your two decisions, if you're actually conflicted and you think either path would get you there, then just pick one. Who cares? And then if you don't like it, you can always go that goes to the life sentence point. I think people get very caught up on, if I pick this, I have to excel at it, and it has to be the rest of my life.
Yes, I know I've had problems with that, like trying to pick something and thinking about it and thinking, okay, if I choose plan A, then I can't do anything else. So I'm stuck. And then you're stuck in paralysis mode. You're like, okay, I can't do anything now, so.
But you also get way ahead of yourself, and one of the things that I love and I've wanted to forever is I love traveling, and I've always wanted to be in the travel industry. And specifically, I've always wanted to be one of those people who gets to review hotels.
Okay.
That would be so much fun. But when I think about it, I'm like, when would I have time for all that travel? When would I have time to write my reviews? And my husband's like, no one's even offered you a freaking job yet. Calm down.
We get ahead of ourselves. Exactly.
When would I fit it all in? Would I bring the kids on these trips? And he's like,
how will I take orders from people who want to order? Want more.
Exactly. And so it's the same thing with lawyers who are like, how will I ever manage partnership? I don't want to be a partner. When I look at what a partner's life is like,
right, exactly,
I don't want that life.
Right.
You have no idea what the world or the industry will be like 5-10 years from now. So take it one step at a time. If you're enjoying it right now, just do it until it no longer serves you. And for as long as it's serving your end goals and really moving you towards that direction, don't get ahead of yourself. So that's easier said than done, obviously.
Of course. Yes. But nevertheless, we have to keep that in mind whenever we're trying to do anything extraordinary or amazing or anything worth working towards. Basically, we got to keep that in mind, that it's all in the small steps, and you never know where the direction that you're heading is going to lead you. So, and it's very, as you said, happiness is directional. So, you just got to choose it, and you got to move forward and see what happens.
I'm going to say something now that's slightly contradictory, but I think it's important to say is that it also doesn't always have to be work. I think sometimes as lawyers, we get so caught up in the billable hour and in making everything really hard. We think that anything worth having is hard, and that the things we're good at are not valuable because they're easy.
Not worth. Yep.
So I think sometimes when you chase your curiosity, and this happens to me, I've heard it happens to so many people, something happens so easily that it almost loses its shine. And we're like, well, there must be something wrong with it. The person who if someone were to give me a travel job right now, I'm like, oh, well, that magazine must not be very good. Like,
Exactly.
why would they give me a job? I'm not qualified.
Exactly.
And
It's
I'm like,
sort of like
yep,
it's sort of like we self-sabotage like our
correct.
own happiness or where we can be with minimal effort. Like something that
Yep.
comes easy, we're like, oh, it must not be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
lack of self-value, right? Like a lack of
Exactly.
self-worth because and also this kind of societal idea that, and I think you almost said it, but then you caught yourself that anything worth having is hard,
Yep. Yeah.
right? And that's somewhat true, but doesn't have to be true. There are
Mm-hmm.
lots of things worth having that just come
that
easily.
that come easy, and I feel like we're so fed this notion that everything that comes that's meaningful is hard,
Yep.
that we get caught up in choosing things that are actually hard
Yep.
and really dismissing the simple things that come to us that actually could make us really happy.
Yep.
Because I've noticed that the things that make me the happiest are the things that are the simplest and that come to me the easiest.
Yeah.
You know, when I of course I have to put in the effort, but sometimes when I actually let go and kind of
Yep.
have do my part, but then let things just
Yep.
naturally happen, they tend to work out better sometimes.
There's just so many contradictions, I think, in happiness and in kind of finding the push and pull of it, where you both have to put in the work, but then at some point let go and let it be, where you have to be in the moment, but also have an aspiration for the future, where, there's this sense of really having to find balance across multiple axes. And it seems like hard work, but the more you do it and create habits around it, the easier it becomes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing how amazing life becomes once you get it kind of down.
So one last thing that I wanted to
Yes.
actually ask you, what is one thing that you do to de-stress and really get centered and let go of all these doubts and lack of confidence that comes with being a lawyer? Because we have to be an expert all the time and we have to know what we're doing all the time. So it gets stressful. So what is the one thing that you do to deal with all of this? Do you have like a mindfulness practice or?
Yeah, no, I think that the key is exactly what you said. I think the key to managing stress is managing your mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Because what is worry but a repeated negative thought, right? And if you're able to stop that loop and control that loop, it's a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to not have control over my thoughts. I would just stay up late at night, just like my brain just spinning.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't control it. So I think, meditation has really taken off for that reason, because that's what meditation is. It's just learning how to control your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think gratitude practices are really important.
Yes, that's number one for me. Yes.
Yeah. I did a 1-year gratitude practice where I did gratitudes every morning and every night for a year. And it changed my life, like literally changed my life, because it was really the process of rewiring my brain. Because I would go to work every morning and just be so upset that I had to go to work. I was like, how did I end up here? This is so hard. And I would like be home on the subway and I'd be like, gosh, how did I end up here? This is so hard. I'm like not cut out for this. And I was like, there has to be a better way. Like I shouldn't start and end every day with these thoughts. And so I was like, what if I replace them with better thoughts?
Yep. And it's amazing how as soon as you shift your mindset and as soon as you start being grateful, everything else that happens, all of your experiences keep reaffirming this sense of gratitude. So you're like, oh, I have an amazing life. Everything works out for me. And everything that actually happens and everything in your experience tells you the same exact thing. You are so lucky. You are blessed. You are amazing, so it's all about shifting your mindset. And I think that's a big part of being happy. So yeah,
absolutely. I mean, your brain can only hold one narrative at a time. It can shift between narratives, but it can only really hold one narrative at a time. And so the narrative you're giving it is, my life is terrible. I'm so overwhelmed. There's so much stress. Your mind is like, okay, that's that. Your brain doesn't know the difference between truths and lies.
Exactly.
It just knows what you're telling it to focus on. And so when you're telling it that message, it starts to gather all the facts to support that message.
Absolutely.
But when you tell your mind, I'm so lucky. And I think that most of us are, most of us who are going to be watching this video and who've had the privilege of having an education and been inducted, or hopefully soon to be inducted into this amazing profession, are really quite lucky because we do have access to an education and to resources that, millions, billions of people
So
on this
many people
planet
don't.
don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of being an immigrant is being really aware of that. And
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
so it's not hard for me to be grateful. I have two healthy children. I have a wonderful marriage. You know, my parents both grew up in wars. So like for me,
Same here. Yeah.
it's
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard for me to be like, oh, I went to a law school and now I'm a lawyer. Like,
Mm-hmm.
feel bad for me. Like I picked this. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I literally went every day. I applied. I like sat down, took the test, show up. So why would I like? How can I blame the profession? How can I blame the partners? Like I've made decisions along the line that got me here,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very much an advocate of 100% like radical responsibility. Everything in my life is my fault.
Yeah. Same here. Same here.
So
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. It was so nice talking to you. And I really hope to talk to you on future episodes too.
of course,
Can you
anytime.
please tell me your website for my
Of
audience?
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can check me out at thehappylawyerproject.com, and my show comes out every Tuesday. So I'd love for you guys to listen along.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.